Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Welcome to Off the Record podcast episode 1, sorry. So before I kind of go into the conversation with the guest, I want to kind of give a bit of an introduction to why we started the podcast. Initially, we thought that we needed content out there which could relate to the masses, which could relate to our society. We wanted to discuss societal issues, but we wanted to have experts or scholars within that field to discuss the issues with, and that's basically the premise of the podcast. And inshallah, going forward, what we're going to try to do is get different guests in, discuss different issues, question them, and inshallah we have an idea of how we can translate the information that's given to us by the guests, and how we can kind of implement it into our community. So I'm not gonna waffle on any further. I'm gonna introduce my first guest. We've been talking for the past hour or so.
Not much of a guest.
It feels like a bit of a weird introduction. It's someone who's been at the forefront of Daily Naseeha from the very beginning, along with Molly Munib, Mufti Sajid, and a couple of the other brothers. And you know, someone who I look up to as well. See, I don't want to gas him up on me live, but you know, he's just basically, we're just going to discuss obviously the origin of Daily Naseeha, why it started, you know, the kind of the timeline of it as well, and then we can meander off any
take it as it comes.
any stories basically. So yeah, without further ado, I mean, you know, why did Daily Naseeha start? Where did it start?
Bismillah. So when it comes to Daily Naseeha, first of all, I'm not a guest. Let's make that clear, because this is a Daily Naseeha podcast, so you can't really be a guest on your own podcast. So why Daily Naseeha started? So Daily Naseeha actually started 2014?
2014, 2015.
2014, I think it was 2014. What actually happened was, before Daily Naseeha started, some of the friend circle that we have, they were involved in certain different type of good work and stuff in the general work that were taking place in the community and stuff like this. But I felt as if, looking back, we were going through a transition period.
Huge transition period.
Yeah. Very big transition period. And what I mean by that is, some of us were trying to like get our salam point and things like this, while the other brothers, some of them were still gaining out that life they were involved in, and you know, trying to come to this side. But let's be straight. When Daily Naseeha started in 2014, I believe there was limitations in options on what to do as a Muslim in our community. For
the youth, or just generally?
Both, innit?
Both.
In the sense of, a young Muslim wants to be, when he starts practicing, he wants to enjoy his journey. And when we say practicing, what do we see? We see, we think of the elder in the mosque with the white beard,
sat in the corner in the chair.
Yes. Yeah. And we find that very boring. So obviously the idea of practicing back then, looking back to how we consider practicing now, is very different. We'd find it wouldn't feel appealing. Do you see what I'm saying?
Yeah, I see where you... Yeah, okay.
Yeah. So if you look back to the 2014, I still remember what happened. And I don't think many of you guys actually know this story.
Yeah, I've been hesitant before this podcast, so you keep mentioning it.
Okay, so what happened was, subhanAllah, there's one day I randomly got a phone call from a certain friend of mine's mum. And she goes, keeping in mind, look, we were playing salah and stuff like this, and we were close friends, and we seemed like just average guys. And I got a phone call which was, I'll never forget this phone call. And she goes, so-and-so individual, meaning her son, is, subhanAllah, but sorry, she goes, she has caught her son with an alcohol bottle. Yeah. And what actually happened is, he hit that alcohol bottle, the mum caught him, and she was distraught, absolutely distraught. Now you have to understand, this is a brother from the community who's attended the madrasa and
gone through the whole system,
gone to the system, yeah. gone to the masjid events and stuff that were happening at the time. Being through all of this, she was very distraught. She didn't know what to do. who to go to, nothing like this. And she obviously knew that this is my very close friend, or this is a very close friend of mine, because obviously we had a small knit circle. And she goes, "What do you do?" I'm completely shocked. I mean, so was I. This is the first I've heard of it.
As a mother, to see your son go through the whole madrasa system, and then to see that,
you're shocked, right? What would any of us do? We don't have a clue. And this is just before Ramadan, literally just before Ramadan. So the suggestion we made, we came to the conclusion was, let me chat to the brother first. Let's come to the terms that, look, this is what's happened. How do you move forward? I still remember meeting the brother exactly where I met him. He was stood in front of me and he was telling me what he's done, and he was crying, he was in tears, and he goes, "I want to change my life," and stuff like this. And I'm thinking in my head, how does a young person change their life in today's day and age? How do we change our life but have that longevity in life change? Because that's the hardest bit, right? Is establishing the salah in your life is part of the change, but is that enough as a Muslim to keep you on that path and that journey? Yeah. So we decided that let's do itikaf in Ramadan, the nawafil itikaf, because we couldn't do the sunnah one. So we stayed in the masjid.
Right, so this is straight after your conversation with him.
This was.
So I assume it'd been Ramadan.
No, I think as far as I remember, this was just before Ramadan.
Okay.
And then when Ramadan was coming, we were making a plan for Ramadan. So when Ramadan came, we decided like the last 10 days we're going to stay in the masjid, the itikaf, sunnah itikaf, and we're going to do what we can with this opportunity. We had no structure, nobody to do it with us, nothing. So that's what we did. And there was a few of us, so we called some random friends, say, "Look, just join us for itikaf. We don't know what we're doing, we have no structure, let's just do it." And our itikafs in the masjid are very independent, it's not like all those who attend itikaf, there's a structure for the day. So we were there, and we reached out to some of the teachers that we know, Sajid, Munib, and these guys, and said to them that, can you come in after Fajr sometimes and just give us a little reminders. They actually did I remember two of the reminders. They did one on a description of paradise.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. And then they did another one on the description of the hellfire the day after. And one of the other reminders, it was more of a Q&A, questions about anything we needed answering. And we wanted to spice things up a little bit. We're young lads, we still consider ourselves young, but we're a little bit younger. This is 2014. Yeah. We decided to go to the graveyard. So we went with the brothers. So let's go to the graveyard. Let's reflect on death. As a young person would want to do, right? Let's reflect on death. Let's do something that's hard hitting, something that brings us back to home.
A visual reality, seeing the graves as well.
Absolutely. And then we went, and Qadr Allah, that we were there, and there was a grave that was dug up open. So that basically means it was ready to someone to be buried the next day or two. We stood around it, we reflected, pondered. We had a little reminder. It was, I don't know why, I don't have the best memory, but I can remember this. I have the full picture. I can remember exactly what happened, who was there, what we spoke about. Then we went back to the masjid, and from that moment we said to ourselves, we're going to do something on a regular to keep us consistent on reflecting upon Allah, learning about our religion, and helping others. Because back then, what was it? What do you remember?
I mean, from a personal point of view, obviously there was like you mentioned obviously the madrasa system, but besides that, you just go to the masjid, you pray your namaz, and even then, I'll be very honest, like we were struggling then as well. Like you said, we were going through like a transition period. You're neither here nor there. You don't know who to go to for guidance. So I mean, I agree. It's a very weird phase to be in, a very confused position, especially as a youngster. Because
if you actually think, even to this day, if you think to the organizations that we have in our area, you hear the same vision, and this vision never sits right with me. I always find it's very uncomfortable. It's a very uncomfortable vision, and it's generally, how do we bring the youngsters to the masjid? But that should never just be the case. We've limited our vision. What we want to achieve, as what we want for our youngsters, is so minimal and so basic. We aren't creating leaders. We are not creating the ones who stand on the forefront of social change. We aren't. What we want is as long as he comes to the masjid, is sufficient. But let's be straight. How many brothers through our time of this experience in the da'wah and stuff we come across who are in the masjid, but they're still struggling with alcohol, or they still got gambling issues, or they're still involved in pornography, or they're still involved in some madness. So is it sufficient as a young Muslim? We're keeping in mind the youth is emphasized so much in Islam constantly that it would only make sense that this is the time of nurturing and creating the young leaders. I mean, we speak about the amazing of the Sahaba, etc., and they were in their youth. We speak about the importance of youth. You are the changers, you are the leaders, you are so important, etc. The hadith comes to mind of the Prophet, peace be upon him, about the 7 types of people who are under his shade. And one is the youth who dedicates his life in practice, in ibadah. But we limit that to the 5 daily prayers. Okay.
So would you say that, I guess, that was a premise for Daily Naseeha starting, or that was a discussion that you had initially with the...
It wasn't, that was a frustration. As youngsters, we were frustrated. We had masjids after masjids. We have been through the madrasa system, etc. We had everything there, but we had nothing for young people. There was no youth. Name me 3 youth organizations in our community. And I'm not talking about youth organizations which are involved in football events and retreats and stuff like this. I am talking where the focus is identity, the focus is leadership skills, the focus is creating and nurturing a young person. You don't have that, because that's never been our focus. Our focus is keep them in the masjid for salah and then keep them busy. But don't nurture them to become something that they can create
proactive
change.
Muslims.
Yes, proactivity. We don't have proactive Muslims. And when we sat back then, we decided we want proactive Muslims. We want to be the proactive. We just want, it's enough of the complaining, enough of the ulama are doing this.
Enough of the bickering on the side. We wish we had this, wish we had that.
The masjid ain't doing this.
Exactly.
No. What are we doing? What are you going to do? You have 24 hours, I have 24 hours. You have time, I have time. What are we going to do? And who are you going to be? What change are you going to make? And what can you actually do? And don't get me wrong, when we started in 2014, we were told back then, you are just overzealous youngsters. Yeah, I still remember back then, man, barely any facial hair, and we were these energized youngsters.
For sure, man.
But you see, what it was is the reason I believe, inshallah, obviously Allah knows best, that Daily Naseeha had a level of consistency and has a level of consistency is, and I'm not talking about myself, I'm talking about the others. You know who I'm talking about. The reason why it is where it is and it's going where it's going, and there is still the same individuals who joined it initially are still here, is because they had a very deep sincerity. They seen the pain of society, and they seen the pain of their brothers and their sisters that they're going through, and they were frustrated but fueled. That frustration became a fuel in the sun.
Exactly, yeah. And they went, obviously themselves, they went through it as well. You know, a lot of the brothers that we speak to within our circle, you know, how many of them maybe different avenues of frustration, but frustration nonetheless.
Absolutely.
You know what I mean? And I think that's like the core idea. That's a main idea that we that fueled the fire for all of us, and that's that vision that we could get behind.
What's so amazing is the brothers today who are involved in the da'wah and involved in nurturing of the youngsters are the same individuals maybe 7 years ago were involved in alcohol, smoking weed, up to the most madness that you would consider the major sins in society. Yet they are the same individuals today who are reminding the youngsters and trying to cultivate the minds of the youngsters. For me, that is, you have learnt from your difficulties and you have become a leader. You are becoming a leader. That is what we hope to achieve. That's what Daily Naseeha was for us.
That was the initial why, I guess.
That was the initial, and we had no idea. Yeah. We had no logo, we had no name. Even the name, how funny is the name? I remember I texted you. Yeah. I got AK.
I remember I was sat in my bedroom. I get a text from Yahya, AK, we need a name for this organisation. Then my cousin brother, he just came back from a long day of work. I was like, Yaqub, have you got a name for it? And then we just went through a ton of names, and he said Daily Naseeha, and I was like, you know what? It's got an actual... it's got a ring to it, you know what I mean? I could pass this by you here, and then obviously I sent it to you, and then since then it was just like a really minor thing. We just came across, came out of nowhere.
And even the full organization just came out of nowhere. I mean, it wasn't an organization. What was it? One of us had a social so one of us had a social media account.
Yeah.
He went from a personal account to an organization, yeah, just put a logo on, gave it a name, started putting reminders on, and that's when the first ever project we established started, which was the project of the monthly gatherings. The aim was the remembrance of Allah, and the method was the young people will be at the forefront of it. They will be the ones who will be inviting. They will be the ones who are bringing people in, and allow the scholars to do the da'wah, meaning the reminders. We're just going to bring people in. And that sounds like a standard idea, but you see, that was innovative at the time.
It was, I don't know, but I just generally remember, like, it was quite difficult for someone who was just initially starting out. So youngsters, like I said, who were neither here nor there, to call other people towards the masjid. But like I said, it was a vision that we were fueled by, and through that we were like, okay, come to the masjid. We feel your struggle. We know your pain, man.
Yeah.
Come, sit with us, join us.
We relate to you.
Exactly.
We're going not that we have been. We're going through what you've been through. Because keeping in mind, it was before Ramadan when the initial start happened, and the brothers were still involved in whatever they were involved in. And it was the first week of Ramadan where the first event happened. So within 4 weeks, you haven't changed your life. You are still involved in what you're involved in. But regardless, what did we say is, regardless of what's happening, we are going to start making positive change. And inshallah, through that journey, we will change ourselves. And that's basically the initial starts of Daily Naseeha.
So I know, obviously, I hear you mention obviously the why, as to why Daily Naseeha started, but going on from there, give a bit of a brief overview of some of the projects that we've kind of done, some of the projects which stick out to you personally, and start from the beginning, straight after obviously the Ramadan where we had that discussion. Then where did we go from there, basically?
So Daily Naseeha has been established for 7 years.
7 years, yeah.
Now, Daily Naseeha is a very local focused organization, very local. So we don't focus too much on international, that type of stuff, in terms of our focus point. But the extent we can have benefit can be. But the focal point has always been local. It's always been hands-on. It's always been, we do the legwork and we try to make the change. We be at the forefront of it. So the main project we initially started was the monthly gatherings. So in the masjid, and what's interesting about this was, by the way, slight trigger warning. So in the masjids, we used to use one of the masjids initially where we used to gather every month, bring as many youngsters as we could together. No posters, no PR, nothing like this, just basically calling.
Text or calling. Yeah, I remember that. Yeah.
And we'd all have a mission that, okay, 10 of us have come, you all have to bring one more guy, 2 more guys. You've seen how, to what extent, alhamdulillah, I got to. I mean, there was times where,
even within the local, just our group as well, just from a text, slowly people started coming, and then they kind of joined us, they helped us out. They started kind of bringing other people in. So it's like a good domino effect. Yeah.
I mean, we got to the point where, alhamdulillah, I mean, again, numbers didn't dictate success of the event. It dictates the success of the method. Yeah. So the method was, we had 80 to 100 youngsters coming.
I'd say that.
We had people of variations of age, background,
different walks of life,
very different walks of life,
different situations. And
there were times where, now keeping in mind, we did this every month for 4 or 5 years consistent, about good 4 years, nearly going into 5 years. Every single month we had different reminders, lessons. We done stuff like how to pray salah according to the sunnah, to the Sahaba series, all the different types of stuff. We had brothers who, they came to the event because the week later they had a court case, and they wanted to be part of the event as a reminder to bring them back to their connection with Allah Jalla wa Ala. And what we used to do, our event was the reminder and then Qiyamul Layl. And what always sticks out to me was how 11, 12 o'clock at night, you would have the masjid lights off, and you would have nearly 100 youngsters in Qiyamul Layl making dua. Some in sujood, some just stood in prostration, some just reciting the Quran. but you'd hear the tears and the cries.
The sniffer. Yeah,
You will always hear the tears and the cries of people, because we would make sure the reminders are about seeking the forgiveness of Allah, how to do this. This is your opportunity. When was the last time you put your head on the ground and ask Allah for forgiveness from the heart in the masjid at such a beautiful time? The evening time, right, where it was silent. We actually never had permission from the masjid to do this, you know. Masjid wouldn't entertain this idea. They wouldn't allow the events to take place. So we found a loophole on how to do it without getting caught. Because there was a very disconnect between masajids and what was needed at the time. And that's no disrespect to anyone. I just believe there was a disconnect between youngsters and those who were the caretakers of the masjid because of lack of communication between both sides. I don't believe it's a one-sided problem. I believe it's a both-sided problem. Masjids do want youngsters to be part of it. Youngsters do want to be active. Nobody's coming to the table to have them discussions. So that was kind of like the
only kind of barrier, would you say? That was
one of the main. I mean, there's more. I mean, there's a lot more, but one of the main barriers for us anyway at that time. Plus, there was a concern, innit? You guys are youngsters. What are you guys doing? This is outlandish. This isn't heard of. Why are you guys bringing so many? And let's be straight. We know there's racism in our community. There was times where we'd have the people from different backgrounds coming, and they'd be coming. And I remember once one of the brothers came up to me and goes, "I was walking into the masjid, and some of the elders made a comment about me." And you have to understand which youngsters we're talking about. We're talking about the individuals who at that time were supplying the drugs of our community. So they turn up in certain type of cars, in certain outfits, in certain styles. We're talking about the youngsters who are involved in a lot of crime or whatever else. You know what our community is about. It's about the drugs and stuff like this. They were the ones who were coming. And when they walked in, someone made a comment because the masjid is dominantly Asian Indian. And some of the brothers that were coming in was from our Pakistani community, and there were comments was made about them, like they said something along the lines of, these are them brothers. I don't want to use the terminology. They're coming into our masjid, and he mentioned that to us, and it was annoying. It was frustrating. It's like, you do not understand the greater mission here. You don't see what's going on.
It's very detrimental to the actual goal of what.
Without a shadow of a doubt. If you are a person who's going to the masjid back and forth, but you are not seeing what's going on in the community, and then you're making passive comments, you don't realize the actual difficulties our people are facing, our community is facing. You don't see it. These events for us was a form of safeguarding not just Iman, but safeguarding the mindsets and the general people at large. Man, we had to protect our youngsters. We had to protect our people. These are the future leaders, but there was nothing done to cultivate them or protect them in any way. This was it for them. So many youngsters used to come, so it got to the point where people clocked what we were doing. But subhanallah, what's so amazing about this? We switched it up. It got to the point where the comments got too much, the racial comments got much, and the pressure of why you're doing this and all this got too much. We decided, fine, we find another venue. We took it to the garden of one of our brothers, the famous garden.
A very blessed garden, that.
Alhamdulillah. Keeping in mind, at this point, we didn't have posters. We used to share messages on WhatsApp. And we didn't have a proper venue. We went to the gardens with our teachers, and we would fill them gardens as much as possible. As much as possible, bring so many youngsters in. And we would do the reminders. I don't know if you remember the one in, it was around December time. And Sheikh Abdul Majid came.
Oh man, yes, I can still hear his voice in that. It was. I don't think I've ever heard like a silence like that from all youngsters who were just so engaged. Like you said, we had youngsters from all walks of life.
Absolutely.
Different situations, different scenarios. But the way that room was captured, everyone was so engaged. Like it really hit home. Even for brothers who are practicing, brothers who are not practicing, but at the same, you just were in it. And I think a lot of the events, majority of the events, the level of engagement, alhamdulillah, you've seen it yourself. You've mentioned there were times of the night where you would hear a cry in this corner, you'd hear a cry in that corner, you'd hear a brother praying Quran, and it was just unheard of. You've never 80 to 100 youngsters, going through that. It was,
I mean, that specific event, subhanAllah, I remember when we contacted Sheikh Abdul Majid and we said to him that it's a private event and these are the type of youngsters we're going to bring. We're going to bring the ones who are struggling very seriously in our community, those who are involved in the supplying of drugs, those who are involved in taking them, those who are involved in intoxicants and all this type of stuff. And we wanted to keep it private. We didn't want them to feel uncomfortable in any way, shape or form. So we took it to the summer house. In that little venue that we used, it was cold. There was nowhere to sit. We were sitting on the floor. We had to clean up beforehand. We had a little barbecue going outside. It was December. It was winter. It was literally the last 2 weeks of December. Sheikh Abdul Majid travelled hours. He came. He sat down. And we said to him, don't speak filtered. Be direct, be harsh, and speak from the soul. That event shook people. That reminder was... Allahumma barik, it was a very strong reminder. He spoke so direct to every person in that room that it's an event I don't think we can... It's an event we will never forget. It's an event till this day where some of the ones who attended that event will still talk about it. I was just going to
ask you, did you get any feedback from anyone who was going through a tough period at that time, attending that event and then, coming to yourself or coming to someone else within the team and saying, look, man, that really hit home.
It was more the fact of, when's your next event? When's this happening again? That was a wake-up call for me. It was one of them situations. And for youngsters who are... Keeping in mind, how many of these youngsters do we drag? They didn't come because... A lot of them didn't come because they wanted to. We used to go rounds in cars. Those of us who used to drive, we used to drive to people's houses and say, bro, you said a week ago you're going to come, or we're picking you up, you don't have a choice, come.
I think that was like the thing that we used to do before, innit? Who's coming in, whose car, who are you picking up?
On WhatsApp.
On WhatsApp. Here's a group, put a message on, confirmed, attending. So, yeah, I remember that.
So, alhamdulillah, that was, at the time, that was the main thing that was happening with Daily Naseeha. Another project that really sticks out was, what we realised was there was a disconnect between the sisters in our community, the general obvious sister, and the access to knowledge. Yeah. And what we wanted to do was, we wanted to create something where the average sister could access the information they need, the knowledge they need for them to get closer to Allah Jalla wa'ala, how to worship, who to worship, what are the fiqh that they need to learn, and everything else that's pertaining to women. I still remember that first meeting when we sat down and we sat with two of our amazing teachers, and we said, this is the vision, help us. And there was a shura that done, and we came to an idea, and what we did was, it was a Sunday classes that we started. We had sisters teaching sisters, qualified sisters teaching sisters, and there was people of ages from the age of 16, 17 to 48, 49, 50 plus.
That's amazing, man.
Aunties. And what was so amazing about that was, and again, it was again revolutionary. It doesn't sound revolutionary now, because now, mashallah, Allah Mubarak, you have so many massages that provide facilities for sisters now. But back then, you either had to attend the general madrasa, and by the age of
an alima class,
exactly, by the age of 14 you leave, or secondly you do the full alima intense course. Not everybody can do that. However, access to standard information, basic information, is vital, because obviously for the women, they are the first teachers. Right?
Of course.
They're the ones who cultivate society. They're the one who nurture the young leaders coming up. So we started these classes going through the basics of knowledge. Interesting point that sticks out is one of the aunties said to me that I didn't know that I was making major mistakes in my wudu and my ghusl, and she was in her late 50s.
Wow.
And it just makes you think, right?
Nice.
The disconnect was serious.
And it's very selfish of us to not even think. We weren't even thinking.
We weren't thinking about that side of the community, because just like men have their battle with their desires and their battle with their difficulties, so do the women.
So do women, of course.
Just like us, we have identity crisis, and so do the women. What are we going to do about it? And we wanted to be an organization that's for the youth. We wanted to bring it back to Daily Naseeha. How do we, the voice of the youth, that's what we used to call ourselves back then, the voice of the youth. We want to bring social change. How do we bring it back? This was the second project that we did. It was, alhamdulillah, it was a very long-term project that went on for many, many years.
Alhamdulillah. I mean, even obviously following on from there, it wasn't just changes within the community, it was also obviously projects abroad as well. And obviously you were part of One Nation previously, and you brought on the Albania project.
That was
was that through Rahma Mercy?
Yeah, that first time, the Safe Haven.
Yeah.
That was an amazing project. We went to Albania and we seen some of the situation in Albania, and one of the imams in one of the areas said to us that we went to go see some of the students, the young Hufaz and stuff, and he said, take us to he said, I need to take you to a home of a widow. And
so this is the Imam telling you?
The Imam. We never intend to go to see that home. We went to see the madrasa, and the Imam said, I'm going to take you to this specific home. You need to see the situation. I went inside the home. I was with a few of my teachers from madrasa that where I was studying, and
first reactions, how was it when you saw it?
Shivers, man.
Yeah.
The ceiling was coming in. There was you could see the sky. This is a widow and two young sons, Muslim, in Albania, living. Subhanallah, the only food they had was potatoes. They took us to the back room to show us that they had dried potatoes, which they used to eat, and that's it. The ceiling was coming in. The house was on the verge of crumbling. One of the builders that was with us, he touched the wall like this, and you just see the bricks coming down. I was young at the time. My two teachers, they were in tears, man.
It was one of the first projects, so you must have been quite young.
It was tough. Yeah. It was a tough sight to take in. We were broke. As men, we were broken. We were thinking, what do we do? And the Imam goes, can you do something about this? And out of your energy and your goodwill, you're like, yeah, we're going to sort this out. I mean, once we started walking away from that situation, 10 steps away, we're like, how? This was a what? 13,000? No, 15th?
13,000.
£13,000 project.
Yeah.
How are we going to do £13,000? We didn't have a clue. But we Daily Naseeha took on the project. Daily Naseeha, which was full of 20, how old were people back then?
Wow, in our teens, late teens.
In our late teens, man.
Yeah.
We were still at university. We were like, we're going to take on a £13,000 project. You know how long it took to raise £13,000? 1 entire year. The organization contacted me near the end of the year, and they said to me that because you've tried so hard, we're going to pay the rest of it off. We said, no, we've done it.
Yeah.
We've done it. We've done the £13,000. We did barbecues. We didn't know how to do charity events.
Oh, man.
We had people in
vans. It was trial and error.
We had vans and people fundraising for us. £10 here, £20 there. Certain family were just giving us money every few months, and alhamdulillah, we hit that amount. And then I still remember the moment we went back and seen that home. And
yeah, how was it? I mean, you had the chance to see that, see the difference. Well, see the mother and the two sons as well.
Subhanallah. The home was amazing. The home was amazing. When we went in, we never told the home. We never told the family, that this is the people that did the home, etc. Because it wasn't us. It was Daily Naseeha. Daily Naseeha was bigger than me or any one person. It was loads of brothers. If anything, the brothers that were doing it were more active than myself anyway. But the one thing that stuck out was the auntie said, sometimes I wake up in the middle of the night and I can't come to terms. This is my home. Keeping in mind she's been living in this home for a few years, and she goes, I can't believe what's happening here. She goes, I fall into sujood and make dua for whoever supported this project. Alhamdulillah. And that's the hardworking brothers behind the scene. So that was that project. I don't want to go too much in detail about too many of the other projects, but in general, over the last so many years, we tackled different challenges, which were the difficulties of our young people in our community, the social issues to the spiritual issues to the
identity issues.
Focus on identity. That was our focal point. Everything had to come back to identity. Even the charity work that we were involved in, the convoys to Europe that we did, to the container projects that we were sending to Syria on a regular basis. It wasn't the project, it was the building of the Muslim values. we are young individuals in our community who are going to take time, instead of, you know how like some youngsters in their free time is, I'm going to I'm going to go play football, or I'm going to do this, I'm going to do that. We wanted our hobbies to become the work of da'wah and din. Does that make sense? We wanted our Islam to be our identity, where even at times we want to have fun.
Pleases Allah, innit?
Yes, that even the fun, we want it to be a means of enjoyment for us, but it is pleasing to Allah. And that's what we focused on. So these are brothers who had no experience in containers and stuff, and they were sending out containers. You guys were...
Oh man, that was one of the best projects. And it created a brotherhood, I think, that inshallah will last a lifetime. You know, the people I met doing the container are still the same brothers that I see on a regular basis.
Yeah.
But like I said, it was minimal experience to no experience. But there was a sole vision, you know, we wanted to support our Muslim brothers and sisters abroad. And we wanted to get the pleasure of Allah, you know, whilst we're young, whilst we can still do this.
But we wanted to always be outlandish in our project. I'll give you another example. I don't know if you recall, there was a time a few years back, on Twitter, there was, I don't want to say what happened, the incident, but in response to the incident of some people were slandering the Prophet, peace be upon him, and a certain brother, actually, it was one brother, I don't actually know who the brother is, but it became a viral tweet, hashtag who is Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. And in response to that, people were tweeting some amazing things about who our beloved Prophet was. And it was a Salatul Jumu'ah, and we saw some of our teachers, and we said to them that we want to do something about this out of our love and also our frustration of what people are trying to say about our Prophet. And there was a massive PR campaign going on about, they were trying to slander the Prophet. We want to respond to this as the youngsters. We want to defend the honor of the Prophet.
Well, we want to be at the forefront of it.
We want to be at the forefront. We always want, as leaders, you want to be at the forefront. As aspiring leaders, should I say, we want to be at the forefront. How are we going to respond to this? So we put together a bit of content, put some wording together, made a leaflet, who is Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. It was done in like 24 hours. Put the wording together. A good brother of ours who designed it, put it together, and then another brother, the local printers, fi sabilillah, they printed it for us, 10,000 leaflets. Then we said, okay, we've got these boxes of leaflets, what are we going to do? Let's go Manchester. Let's go Manchester. Where's everybody at? So let's go. Let's remind people as a form of da'wah. With us, we took a card. It had the translation of a verse reminding people about the punishment of Allah and the mercy of Allah on both sides. We took these two pieces of content, went into the streets of Manchester, Women's Road to be precise, and we...
On a cold December day.
On the cold December day. Yeah. Remember the first time we went, one of the brothers broke down as well?
Yeah, he's with us right now. He's behind the camera, brother Salman.
Terrible car.
We're not going to expand on that point much, but yeah.
But we got there late night. We took a table. We took some translation of Quran, and we started giving da'wah. Our da'wah was very basic. We weren't experts in any form of da'wah. Is reminding people of Allah, the Muslims and the non-Muslims, giving out the the translation of Quran, giving out the cards. We had a mic system. We had two brothers who were Hafiz, and we said to him, just recite Quran. So when anybody walks past, maybe they'll remember Allah. We were energetic youngsters. Do you understand? We were energetic. We didn't know why we were doing it. It was more the fact that we just want to do something.
We just want to do something.
We want to keep the fire burning within ourselves. This is us breaking our own barriers. This is us getting past the idea of shyness and all these type of things. We just want to do it. Some of the brothers were on the mic system reciting Quran, whilst the other brothers were giving our leaflets. And some of the very energetic brothers said they're going to go all out. They went to every shisha place down there. They went in, asked permission from the owners, can we give out these leaflets? And they gave them out. Some of the places had dance floors. They were stood on the side giving out leaflets about the da'wah of the reminder of the Prophet, peace upon him, and the reminders of who is Allah Jalla wa'ala, the punishment and the mercy of Allah. We went to the places where people were intoxicated.
I remember the alleys of...
Allah al-Azim, we were sat in cars of brothers who involved in intoxicants. We were in their car, so they were still stable, because obviously certain intoxicants, they're still aware of what's going on. And we were talking to them about Allah Jalla wa'ala. We were having conversations to them about this is Allah, this is how you're going to attain His mercy.
Wow.
And literally, it was the same thing. قُلْ يَا عِبَادِيَ الَّذِينَ أَسْرَفُوا عَلَىٰ أَنفُسِهِمْ لَا تَقْنَطُوا. It was the same things we were talking about. But it was the fact of, we're young, we love our religion, we want to make a change. And we're not going to play safe all the time. We want to be at the forefront. We want to challenge ourselves.
We don't want to be reserved, we want to be proactive, essentially.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So that was an absolute amazing project, which we did for quite a few years. And then there was the issue of atheism.
Yeah, I remember when that hit our community like a brick, especially the youth at the time. And obviously you had that discussion with Mufti Sajid and Mullah Munib as well. And then we genuinely feel like we had to do something about it. And then obviously that's when the Muhammad hijab.
Before that.
Even before that.
So even before that, we came across some situations where some people had apostated and they made it a public thing, and people were trying to like give them da'wah and stuff. And we actually met with some of these people face to face, and we had some conversations with them, trying to deal with the misconceptions. But we didn't just want to be reactionary. We wanted to be ahead of the game. How do we deal with the situation at large? We had the opportunity to host Dr. Fakats and Sheikh Abbas, they from JKN Institute. They came down and they delivered a study, a training for imams and students of knowledge, and those in the da'wah and those who are teachers, and how to deal with these type of situations and how to help the youngsters prepare for these type of situations. Then we had a big event from there.
There's also the one-to-one, I'd say. I remember you mentioning a brother from Manchester that we met.
Colin,
no, I'm not going to obviously mention his name or anything, but he had a few questions, and you know they were quite. The questions were quite deep, and you introduced him to Mufti Sajid, and then from there, and then you had a really good little projects like that on the side as well, tackling atheism.
So like. He didn't just have questions, he apostated, he became agnostic.
Wow, okay.
He came with his cousin, they were both agnostic at the time, and they wanted to have a discussion, and they were not, they were students of philosophy. He was, Allah Mubarak, I love this brother, he's very intellectual, and he has amazing akhlaq. And they spent 3-4 hours back and forth, private discussion, going through all the points that they had.
Mufti Sajid.
Yeah, Mufti Sajid. And then that conversation finished and they went away. A few weeks later, he contacted me and said to me, I've accepted Islam again. And today he's not just a Muslim, he's a proactive Muslim. He's involved in da'wah. He's a person who studies. He's a person who gives, who works with, who is involved in online forums and stuff where they talk about these type of situations to help others. So there was many like one-to-ones. There was a sister as well where one of the teachers met her. She had questions related to Iman, really deeply related to Iman. He gave her da'wah, and they had the discussions, and they broke them barriers, and alhamdulillah, she stayed firm on her deen. So there was many situations like that, alhamdulillah. So that was the atheism aspect. We also had Muhammad Hijab, who came. He delivered a fantastic lecture, 2 lectures actually. It was amazing, obviously, spending time with him, learning from him. Did some training. We had Sheikh Haytham al-Haddad come down, who we benefited so much from, and he delivers some workshops. I'm trying to think of some of the other projects that we've done, subhanAllah.
I mean, obviously, we can talk about the projects, but it's the people who it affected. And obviously the people that were involved, you know, and one name comes to mind, it would be impossible to finish this podcast and to have this podcast without discussing him, and because he'll always be linked to Daily Naseeha. And that's obviously Brother Muhammad Basser, you know, someone who was dear to all of us, someone who was we all had a good relationship with him.
You know that brother, subhanallah, Muhammad. Yeah, Muhammad Basser was.
When I picture him, I just picture him with a smile.
Yeah, everyone said the same thing about him. Everyone always say the same thing, and every time he'd see me, he'd say to me, "But when's the next event? When's the next gathering, etc." Now, why he's a very amazing case study for us is. So he left madrasa and everything like this. He was a youngster who went through the same difficulties as everybody else. He's in the same environment, been through the same system. he was one of the early brothers, and because of his closest friend is that you used to bring him to this. So may Allah preserve his friend, because that's a true friend. And they used to come to our events from early on. There was a time where they came in the snow. They walked in the snow, and they came to the event. To the extent the teacher couldn't attend that event because of the snow, but they still came. The gathering. And this brother used to come month in, month out. And when he didn't used to come, he used to text me with a big long message apologizing. And yeah, subhanAllah. So he used to be very regular. And then, you know, we had the news. The news came out last year. May Allah grant him fidos, Allah grant his family afia, and make it easy upon all of them. I mean, it was a very difficult time. It was a random text message that he's passed away. Allah, I couldn't believe it. Muhammad, I had to say to the people, send me a picture, because you can't be talking about our brother.
Yes.
You can't be. I seen him a few days ago, man. He asked me the same, where's the event? And when he passed away, it was a shock to the youngsters. The shock to our community.
It was a real time of crisis.
Absolutely.
Time of crisis.
As Daily Naseeha says, we are the voice of the youngsters. We wanted to be the voice of the youngsters. We said to ourselves, well, how are we going to deal with this? How are we going to help our community at this moment in time? How are we going to help a brother who dedicated time to come to our events where we gain the ajr and he gained the ajr? How are we going to help this situation? We gathered in the masjid the day after. It was the day after. We gathered the brothers and we said, everybody come to the masjid. We're going to remember this brother and we're going to take lessons from his life and the situation. And they all came. We spoke about him, the lessons we can take. And then our teacher took us to the side afterwards and said to us, this individual is a lesson for you all. Because there were times where only a handful of youngsters used to come to your events. But this brother used to come. And now that he's in his grave, and Allah is asking him, who is your Lord, who is your Prophet, and what is your religion? Who helped him create that identity? Who facilitated him having the identity of a Muslim? Who cultivated that? Who wants to be part of that journey? We do, right? Because what other options are there for them? I don't see anything else for youngsters. So when he used to come, this is with his identity being created.
This was the way he was gaining this knowledge.
When he used to come and stand in the middle of the night, in the evening, after the event, and in a Qiyamul Layl, and ask Allah for forgiveness, that's what's helping in his grave right now. When he used to attend and take time when the angels were surrounding that gathering, that's what's benefiting him right now. And if we truly love our brothers for the sake of Allah, then we will grab them with force, with pressure, and pull them away from what they're involved in and bring them back. And Muhammad Bassa was this brother. We loved him for the sake of Allah, and he loved us for the sake of Allah. And we wanted him with us, right?
And he was just going into as you mentioned, you know, we had that gathering the day after he passed away, and everyone kind of went in with like a somber mood. It was a very, you know, everyone was really confused. But I mean, after the Naseeha, after the advice that was given, it was a sense of hope that, you know what, we can take so many different lessons from here, not only from his life, but from just generally, like as brothers, we should try to be, well, we call towards good and we forbid from evil, regardless of where we're at, what our situation is. And it was a perfect example, you know. And I guess the voice of the youth is like the perfect title. At that time, we needed that.
Yeah.
You know, we needed a bit of guidance in crisis.
Absolutely.
The
last 7 years has been, rather than the projects for others, has been a form of the Islamic indoctrinating within ourselves. It nurtured ourselves.
For sure, man.
It created I would like to say, if you see the brothers that we see around us who are behind the scenes, they are the ones who have such a strong vision for Islam and for our community. They are the ones today, some of them are students of knowledge, some of them have found the possible solution for poverty in the Muslim community in this area. They have created the charities. They are the same brothers who are nurturing youngsters. But where does that come from? That came from that last 7 years of journey, of doing them projects, which some of them worked, some of them were disaster. But it's constantly dealing with that and going through that experience where it empowered you, gave you that creativity, gave you that identity, that firm identity.
The confidence as well, I guess. Yeah.
And the networks and everything else that comes with it. Alhamdulillah. And along the way, we've had some amazing... I remember the one brother, one of the revert brothers, who also joined us, because there was nothing for reverts. How are they going to learn about Allah Jalla wa Ala? How? So they joined Daily Naseeha. They came, attended the events, started one-to-one classes, found their identity. So that you were there actually, the day he said to us, he goes, and again, this isn't like a praise on us. If anything, it's a scolding on us and our community. He said to us that if I hadn't found an organization or a group of people to attach myself to, he goes, I would have left Islam, because you guys are disconnected. Like, there's nothing here for youngsters. You were there. Remember, we were
I remember
in the
when
park.
You said,
Yeah. And that was hard hitting, because that for me was like,
it was a real reminder of
we're failing.
Where we're at. Yeah.
Yeah, as a community, we were failing for the revert Muslims, for the Muslims addicts, or for the people who want to come to Islam. We were failing on many different aspects, and we're still finding our feet, and we're still trying. But alhamdulillah, there's progression, right, in a community at large.
So like, obviously you mentioned the projects, and just a concluding thought for myself, someone who's been part of this journey. You kept mentioning, leaders or aspiring leaders, and inshallah going forward, that's what we want to achieve, being at the forefront of issues within our community. And obviously a few projects do stick out, but essentially the goal remains the same, the vision remains the same in every project. Seek the pleasure of Allah, bring people towards good, bring ourselves towards good. And going forward, obviously, I know you'll expand on it, but inshallah, for these podcasts especially, it'll be a great way of kind of expanding on points which we have little to no experience, but maybe we with those pointers, with that advice, Daily Naseeha, what is that? For me personally, it's going through struggles on a daily basis. On a daily basis, as a youth, we're facing issues from all angles. And I guess the only way to kind of understand how to tackle them, or to understand the confusion that we're kind of going through, is through Naseeha. Hence, Daily Naseeha. That's the way I see it. And going forward, what does Daily Naseeha have planned, or what's the projects going forward? So
recently we've done like a bit of a reshuffle and restructure and put our thoughts again together for something long term. I'm speaking more by yourself, not myself. Some of you guys have aged over the years, so I would don't know.
Age over this podcast.
Would you class yourself as the same youth that you were 7 years ago? No. Now, we don't want to be an organization which is limited with time, meaning we get outdated. Rather, we want to be an organization which is timeless. We want to get to a point where we're not known for any of this anymore. Somebody else is doing the work, but it's sadaqah jariyah for us. It's our legacy, and the greatest way for that legacy is to create proactive Muslims. The greatest thing you can do, in a sense of, for the young people, yes, deal with the issues, but long term, is to create that methodology, that mindset within the young people, that they become the proactive youngsters. You have created a leader. Everything after that he does is sadaqah jariyah. You've nurtured his mind, and that's our vision. By that, for example, one of the ideas, like the podcast, is to discuss the relatable, the real issues, the uncomfortable conversations that need to happen within our own community as well. Because we are, again, like I keep saying, we are very our community focused. When I say our community, I don't mean culturally, I mean this specific area, this Kirklees area, because of the fact there's issues that may be here, they may not be in other places. And just basic things like the problems of addiction. We all know, we did an event on this pornography addiction and stuff like this, how to tackle these type of problems. How do you get rid of the barriers that are preventing our young people to become the best version of themselves, as well as the proactive response, which is to create a proactive Muslim. So dealing with the barriers that are there, as well as the nurturing long term. That's our to aim the mindset. It's all based on the mindset, and that's our aim. So we have a couple of projects up our sleeve. I won't go into them too much because they're in the early works of development. Mashallah, because a lot of the brothers work in these type of sectors now. They are developing the projects which will go on, inshallah, which will be long-term nurturing,
Inshallah.
which will be launched relatively soon. Then we have certain projects that are going to be tackling the most problematic issue of our community. The issues where over 90% or 80% of the youngsters are involved in. These type of problems we are working with relatable organizations, creating the structure, putting in the long-term plan to tackle that issue for the young people. And then obviously like the podcast side, the education side, the discussion side, these type of things. So in a nutshell, we are taking our experiences of the last 7 years, of all the different type of stuff we've done, packing it up to this few vital projects which are dealing with the barriers and the mindset and the developments, and releasing that inshallah in our community with our mashayikh and the other people that have been supporting us along the ways. That's how Daily Naseeha's future looks. And inshallah from that I hope more people we hope more people will reach out with ideas, with time and commitment. Because the thing is, AK, is the reality is, this is our legacy. When we go to Allah Jalla wa Ala, what are we going to say? Okay, look, we made mistakes. Many problems we've done in our lives. Many people we've personally done wrong to. But what have you done to attain the mercy of Allah? Did you just pray salah? You just did your fundamental? You didn't believe it was mandatory to aspire above? You know, Sheikh Ali Hamouda says something amazing when he speaks about the verse كنتم خير أمة أخرجت الناس تعملون بالمعروف وتنهون عن المنكر وتؤمنون بالله. When he speaks about this verse, he says objectivity, the idea of objective understanding is determined from the Muslims only. And we are the best of nations because of how we call towards good and forbid evil. But also he talks about how we have the solutions for society. We have the solutions. Society needs Islam and Muslims. Because we have Allah Jalla wa Ala, we have the solutions. So it's about us taking our experiences, what worked, what didn't work, and helping the upcoming youngsters, inshallah, because times are only getting more tough, as we're all aware.
For sure. And obviously you mentioned the point of calling other people towards this project as well, see how we can get feedback and, how others can help us. It's just obviously a point that I wanted to mention, like if there is any feedback from any of the viewers on how we can improve as well, as an organization moving forward, then obviously let us know through our socials.
Absolutely.
Or if you know any of the brothers personally, and if you want to drop them a message, then you can do it. You can do it like that as well. But yeah, feedback would be greatly kind of appreciated moving forward, inshallah.
Inshallah. So I think that brings us to the end, I hope. Looking at the time. Again, Jazakallah khair for the setup and for the time and everything else. For even those who are listening to our annoying voices, it's still, we appreciate that. And inshallah,
forgive our shortcomings and all the ums and ahs in the podcast as well.
Still very new to it. But inshallah, there's a starting point, inshallah. For this the media side, inshallah, for the discussion side. And yeah, inshallah, hopefully until the next one's release. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.